Little boy ran to Mafia Boss crying, "They're hurting my mom. What Mafia Boss did is shocking." The sun had not yet bothered to climb over Lake Michigan, but Lake Haven, Illinois, was already breathing. It was a cold breath, rolling off the water in sheets of mist that clung to the steel skeletons of the Ravenspur Pier night market. The hour was too early for shoppers, too late for the last of the night's deliveries. All you could hear was the distant, lonely cry of a freight train on the South Line, a sound that cut through the thick smell of damp pavement and old coffee grounds. Inside a repurposed shipping container, painted matte black and converted into a makeshift office bar, the air was stale with cigar smoke and tension. This was my world, or rather, the one I commanded. Neon signs from the shuttered stalls outside cast flickering red and blue light across the brushed steel table. The light caught the weave of my suit, a charcoal gray so dark it was almost black, and reflected dully off the polished wood of the bar behind me. I am Emilio Caruso, to the city. I am the Caruso Consortium. To my enemies, I am a ghost. To the men sitting across from me, I was simply the boss. We were discussing logistics, tonnage, routes, percentages, the usual music of my morning. My two senior lieutenants, Mina Vele and Joey Crest, were focused on the ledgers spread between us. Mina, sharp and precise, was pointing out a discrepancy. Joey, broader and calmer, was offering a solution. I was listening, but my attention was on the hum of the city waking up. I heard the train. I heard the foghorn on the lake. I heard the drip of condensation from the container's ceiling. And then I heard something else. The metal door of the container was shoved open, not with a knock, but with a desperate slam. It crashed against the inner wall, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the small space. Mina and Joey were on their feet in a fraction of a second. Their hands went to the holsters beneath their jackets. The two guards posted outside the door were already turning, their own weapons drawn, framing the doorway. But they were not framing an attacker. He was small, maybe 6 years old. His hair was a mess of tangled brown curls, and his face was streaked with dirt and tears. He wore a thin pajama top with cartoon rockets on it, pants that were too short, and no shoes. His bare feet were blue with the cold of the concrete pier. He stood there, panting, his whole body shaking. He looked at the guards, at Mina, at Joey, eyes blown wide with a terror so pure it seemed to vibrate. Then his gaze found me, sitting at the head of the table. He took one ragged, sobbing breath and launched himself forward, stumbling past the frozen guards. "They're hurting my mom." The words ripped out of his small chest, raw and broken. He didn't shout them. He sobbed them. Mina and Joey tensed, expecting a trick, a bomb, a diversion. This is how you get killed in our business, letting your guard down for something that looks innocent. I did not move. I simply raised my eyes from the ledger. It was not a command. It was not a threat. It was just a look. But it was enough. The air in the container didn't just get quiet. It froze. The tension of the meeting was nothing compared to this. This was a vacuum. The armed men at the door lowered their weapons, confused but obedient. Mina and Joey slowly, very slowly, relaxed their postures, their hands still near their guns but no longer gripping them. The boy stopped a few feet from the table, his chest heaving. I pushed my chair back, the heavy wood scraping quietly on the floor. I stood, not to tower over him, but to move around the table. I walked to him and then did what no one in that room had seen me do in years. I crouched down, bringing myself level with him. The neon light hit the side of my face, leaving the other in shadow. I was close enough to see the smear of what looked like ketchup on his cheek, beneath the grime. I kept my voice low, pitching it beneath the panic, rough but warm, the way you talk to a spooked horse, not a child. "What's your name?" He flinched, swallowing a sob. His eyes darted to the guns he had just seen, then back to me. "Micah," he whispered. The name was barely audible. "Okay, Micah." I kept my hands visible, resting them on my knees. "Where's your mom?" Tears welled up again, spilling over, at home, at our apartment. He choked on the words. He's hurting her. Trent Baylor. He won't stop. The name hit me. Trent Baylor, a low-level enforcer, a bully with delusions of grandeur, recently attached to the Vieri Circle, our rivals, a problem I had intended to solve later. It seemed later had just arrived. Where is home, Micah? My voice did not change. It remained calm, a solid thing for him to hold on to in his panic. The Hollow Bridge building, he lisped, the words tumbling out now that the dam was broken. Apartment 4, B, please. He locked me in my room, but I climbed out the window, down the fire escape. I ran. I just ran until I saw the lights. Hollow Bridge, a rotting tenement on the west side, Vieri territory, and a 4-mile run for a shoeless 6-year-old. I stood up, the full height of my frame seeming to pull all the shadows in the room toward me. I reached into my jacket, and for a second, I saw the boy flinch again. I bypassed the holster and pulled out my cigar case. I took one out, lit it, and took a single, slow drag. Then I turned to my team. The ice was back in my voice. Car 1 is with me. I looked at Mina and Joey. Mina Vale. Joey Crest. You take the 2nd and 3rd vehicles. I want a hard perimeter. No one gets in or out of that building until I do. Lock it down. They didn't ask questions. They just nodded. Boss. They moved, grabbing keys and comms units from the bar. The guards outside were already jogging toward the line of black SUVs parked invisibly in the pre-dawn fog. I turned back to Micah. He was watching me, his small body still shaking, but his eyes were locked on me with a desperate, fragile hope. I unclipped the handheld radio from my belt. It was heavy, cold, military grade. I crouched again and placed it gently in his small, trembling hands. He looked at it, confused. This is for me, I said. You stay here. You're safe here. I motioned to one of the guards who had remained by the door. Get him a blanket and some hot chocolate. Now. The guard, a man who had broken arms for me, looked startled but nodded. I looked back at Micah. I am going to get your mom, but I need you to do something for me. You hold this button. I guided his thumb to the transmit switch. When my people tell you we have arrived at the Hollow Bridge building, you press this, and you say one word. You say arrived. That's all. Just arrived. So I know you're still here, and I know you're safe. Can you do that for me? He looked down at the radio, then up at me. He nodded, his small hands gripping the device like it was a life raft. Good boy. I didn't wait for an answer. I turned and walked out of the container, my long coat cutting through the mist. The cold air felt good, sharp against my skin. The convoy was already running, 3 black SUVs, engines rumbling deep and low. I got into the back of the lead vehicle. Hollow Bridge, I said to the driver. Fast. The tires squealed on the damp pavement of the pier. We peeled out of the night market, a blur of dark metal and tinted glass. We shot past the long embankment wall, the colorful, angry graffiti of the local gangs blurring into a single streak of paint in the half-light. There was no sound in the car except for the engine and the quiet static from the radio in my hand. I stared out the window as the ruined landscape of the industrial sector flew by. My face was calm, my breathing was even, but as the driver took a hard left, fishtailing onto the main drag, the red taillights of the car in front of us illuminated my eyes in the rearview mirror. They were cold, they were sharp. But for just 1 second, when I heard that kid say the word Mom, something else had flickered in their depths, something old and something far more dangerous than the man I was going to see. Hollow Bridge was not a building, it was a scar. A 10-story block of concrete misery on the west side, weeping rust streaks from every window frame. The air smelled of wet asphalt, old garbage, and the kind of poverty that clings to the brickwork. My convoy slowed, the headlights cutting through the dirty morning light. We did not roll up to the front. We took the alley, cutting the engines and flooding the exits with shadows. Mina, Joey, and 4 of my best men met me at the service entrance. The lobby was a mess of broken mailboxes and flickering fluorescent tubes. The elevator was dead, just as I expected. The door was wedged open with a sodden newspaper. The carriage stuck somewhere around the 7th floor. "Stairs," Mina stated, her voice flat. I nodded. She took point. We moved, not like thugs, but like water flowing uphill. Silent, coordinated, professional. Our footsteps were muffled on the gritty concrete steps. We passed graffiti, needles, and a sleeping vagrant on the second landing who wisely pretended we were not there. On the third landing, I held up a hand. The team froze. I pointed to Mina and 2 men. "Rooftop access, cover the fire escape, lock the roof door." I pointed to Joey and the other 2. "With me." We split. No words were needed, just the quiet rustle of tactical gear. The 4th floor hallway was a long, narrow tunnel painted a sickly, peeling yellow. The carpet, patterned with stains I did not want to identify, squelched underfoot. We approached the apartment, 4B. The number was painted on the door, but someone had tried to scratch it off. Then we heard it. A sharp crash, like a bottle or a glass breaking against a wall. A man's voice, thick with rage, slurring a stream of curses. "You stupid. I'll kill you. Where is he?" A woman's sharp cry, cut short. That was enough. Joey moved to ram the door, bracing his shoulder. I put a hand on his chest, stopping him. "The frame is rotten," I murmured. I stepped back, gauged the distance, and drove my heel directly into the door right next to the lock set, striking the hinge side. It was not a brute force kick. It was a tactical break. The cheap wood splintered, the corroded metal hinges tore free from the rotted jamb, and the entire door ripped away from the wall, crashing inward. We moved in a 3-man weave, fanning out, clearing the tiny kitchenette in a second. The apartment was a disaster. Furniture overturned, trash everywhere. And then I saw them. He was big, sloppy, Trent Baylor. His face was flushed red, eyes wide and animalistic. He had a woman pinned against the far wall, by a window weeping with condensation. She was a mess, but she was alive. Her name was Aurora Keene. Her cheek was already blooming into a deep, ugly bruise that was starting to swell her eye shut. Her lip was split, a trickle of blood running down her chin. But her eyes were not afraid. They were burning. She was not just taking the beating, she was fighting. Her left hand was locked on his right wrist, her fingernails digging into his skin, even as his other hand, a thick, meaty fist, was raised to hit her again. She was holding his arm, a cheap kitchen knife clattering on the linoleum floor nearby, just out of her reach. Baylor froze, his arm still raised, blinded by our sudden entrance. He stared at me, his small, piggish eyes trying to comprehend who I was, how I had gotten in. I did not raise my voice. I did not draw my weapon. I stood in the center of his ruined living room and let the silence stretch. Heavier than any threat. I just looked at him, the way a biologist looks at a specimen under glass. "Baylor," I said. My voice was calm, like I was reading a weather report. "You are stepping on my territory." He recognized me. The surprise turned to a sneer, a pathetic, cornered animal bravado. He laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "Caruso. What? You running errands now, old man?" He tightened his grip on the woman, trying to use her as a shield. "You're getting slow. The Vieri Circle is going to swallow this whole lake, starting with you." He was still talking when it happened. The timeline was this. 1 second Baylor was talking. 2 seconds Joey Crest had crossed the room, grabbed Baylor's raised arm, and snapped his elbow backward over his own shoulder. The sound was like a thick tree branch breaking, a wet, sickening pop. 2.5 seconds Baylor screamed, a high-pitched sound that was not human. His arm hung at an impossible, useless angle. His other hand reflexively let go of the woman to grab his ruined joint. 3 seconds as his hand moved, Mina Vale, who had flanked him, stepped in smooth as silk. She saw him glance at the fallen knife. She stomped, hard, on the hand that was reaching for it. Then she kicked the blade across the room, where it spun and hit the wall with a clang. I did not watch them. My eyes were on her. The moment his grip loosened, she stumbled, catching her breath, her legs giving out. I was already moving. I shrugged off my heavy wool overcoat, the one that still carried the scent of my cigars and the cold morning air, and wrapped it around her shoulders before she could fall. It swallowed her small frame. She leaned into me for just a moment, her body trembling violently, not from fear, but from adrenaline and shock. I held her steady, my hand on her shoulder. Behind me, Joey was binding Baylor's hands with zip ties. Baylor was sobbing now, a pathetic mess of pain and terror. Aurora pushed herself upright, pulling the coat tighter. Clutching the lapels at her throat, she looked up at me. Her voice was a rasp, but it was strong. "My son," she breathed. "Micah, is he safe?" I looked down at her. That was her first question. Not "who are you?" Not "kill him," just her son. I reached to the radio on my belt, the twin to the one I gave the boy. I thumbed the transmit button. "He's listening to you right now, Aurora." A small, static-filled sound came back, a tiny, shaky whisper that filled the entire, tense room. And arrived. Tears flooded her eyes, the first tears she had shed, but she did not make a sound. She just closed them, a single wave of profound relief that made her sag against me. "You can't do this!" Baylor was blubbering from the floor, where Joey had him subdued, his face pressed into the dirty carpet. "I got rights. I'll call the cops. I'll tell them everything." I turned slowly to look at him. I almost smiled. The law. I walked over and crouched down, retrieving Baylor's smartphone from where it had fallen. It was a high-end, encrypted model. I held it up. "By all means, call them," I said, my voice dropping. "But I think the Interstate Financial Crimes Directorate will be much more interested in what's on this phone. The Vieri Circle, your offshore accounts, the Northline Homes project. I wonder what they will find." His face went from red to chalk white. He knew exactly what was on the phone. He knew that I knew. I stood up and slipped the phone into my own pocket. I looked at Mina. "Fire escape. We are not using the stairs." She nodded and went to the window, forcing it open. I turned back to Baylor one last time. I left him with a promise, my words as thin and sharp as a razor blade. "You will never see this phone again. You will never see her again. You will never see the boy again. If you so much as breathe their names, if I even think you are thinking about them, you will be erased, not jailed, not hurt. You will be deleted from the map." I did not wait for a reply. I guided Aurora, wrapped in my coat, toward the window. "Joey, clean this up. Make sure he understands the terms of his new life." "Understood, boss." Mina was already out on the rusty metal platform. I helped Aurora through the window. The cold air hit us, a shock after the stuffy apartment. My team followed, a silent, dark procession. As we descended the clanging metal steps, I looked back up at the building. An old emergency light in the stairwell, its cover broken, was flashing, a rhythmic, pulsing red. It painted the side of the decaying building over and over, a warning light signaling the end of one life and the start of something new and far more dangerous. My home is not a home. It is a fortress, a cocoon of glass and steel 34 stories above the city, the Harbor Point Tower penthouse. From here, the rest of Lake Haven is just a map, a glittering, silent diagram of the territory I control. The windows are not just windows, they are floor-to-ceiling sheets of reinforced glass that wrap around the entire living space, showing me the curve of the lake, the grid of the city, and the black ribbon of the interstate. Nothing moves down there without me knowing. It is the safest place I know, because it is the one place I am in total control. We came up through the private garage, the private elevator. The doors opened not into a hallway, but directly into the main room. The morning sun was finally breaking through the clouds, flooding the apartment with clean, white light. It was a stark contrast to the filth of Hollow Bridge. Here, there was only Italian marble, dark walnut, and the scent of old leather and citrus. Mrs. Daria was waiting. She's my housekeeper. But that title is an insult to her. She's the iron hand that runs this place. A woman of 60 years with a spine of forged steel and eyes that have seen more than mine. She had already received my call. The moment the elevator doors slid shut behind us, a small figure darted out from the kitchen hallway. Micah. He was clean. He was wearing new, soft clothes, gray sweatpants, and a blue sweater, and his hair was damp, as if he had just been washed. He was holding a glass of orange juice. He stopped, his eyes landing on Aurora. The glass dropped from his hand. It did not shatter. It hit the thick Persian rug with a dull thud, spilling orange juice onto the silk. Mom, Aurora, who'd been standing rigid in the center of the room, my overcoat still clutched around her, made a sound. It was a sound I had never heard before. A broken, strangled noise that was half sob, half gasp. She fell to her knees. Micah ran. He flew across the marble floor and crashed into her, his arms wrapping around her neck so tight I thought he might choke her. "Mommy, you're okay." She buried her face in his clean hair, her whole body shaking. She was not crying, not yet. She was just holding him, rocking back and forth on the floor, breathing him in, her eyes, the one that was not swelling, shut tight. When she opened them, the fire was gone. The terror was gone. All that was left was a deep, aching softness. She pulled back just enough to kiss his forehead, his nose, his cheeks, her bruised lips managing a pained, brilliant smile. I turned away, giving them the illusion of privacy. I walked to the window, the city sprawling beneath me. I heard Mrs. Daria quietly approaching the boy and his mother, her voice a low murmur. "Come, my dears. Let's get you comfortable, doctor. Ives is waiting." I stood there, unbuttoning the cuffs of my shirt, rolling them up my forearms. I had given my coat to her, and my suit jacket was still in the car. I was in my shirt sleeves, and I felt exposed. I watched the reflection in the glass. I saw Mrs. Daria help Aurora to her feet and guide her toward the guest wing, Micah clinging to her hand, never letting go. An hour later, Doctor. Rowan Ives found me in my study. Ives is a man I trust with my life, mostly because I pay him enough to ensure he values mine more than his. He's a disgraced surgeon, but a brilliant doctor. "She's resting," he said, accepting the glass of whiskey I offered him. "So is the boy, Mrs." Daria gave him some warm milk. "Her condition?" "She's tough." He took a sip. "Mild concussion, as expected. A hairline fracture on the 9th rib. He worked her over pretty good." He paused, his professional gaze meeting mine. "And Emilio?" "There are old bruises, yellows and pale greens, faded, but visible on her arms and back. This was not the first time. This was just the worst time." "A cycle of violence." I nodded, my jaw tightening. "She'll make a full recovery." "Physically, yes. I gave her something for the pain. She'll sleep for a few hours. The rest, well, that's not my department." He finished the whiskey. "I'll be on call." He left. I went back to the main room. The sun was high now. Mina was there, waiting for me by the window, a tablet in her hand. "Baylor is gone," she reported, not looking up from the screen. "Joey convinced him to take a long vacation. The phone is already with our tech team. They're cracking the encryption now. Vieri, moving. They're consolidating a shipment at the Lakeshore Rail Yard. Looks like they're spooked. Baylor wasn't just a thug, boss. He was a message, a psychological probe. Vieri was testing our response time on the west side." "He got his answer," I said. The soft sound of bare feet on marble made us both turn. Micah was standing in the hallway, rubbing his eyes. He looked small and lost in the vast, high-ceilinged room. Mina gave me a look. I gave her a slight nod. She vanished. Silent as smoke. I was alone with the boy. He walked slowly toward me, his eyes on the windows, on the entire city laid out below us. He looked terrified and awed. He stopped a few feet away from me. He looked down at the expensive rug, then up at me, his small face serious. "Is this your house?" he whispered. "It is." "Is my mom sleeping?" "Yes. The doctor gave her something for the pain. She's safe." He seemed to process this. He walked closer, right up to the window, and put his small hands on the glass. He looked down, watching the tiny cars move so far below. "Are we safe?" he asked, his voice cracking. "You won't let them find us, will you, Trent?" I walked to stand beside him. I looked down at the city, at the endless sprawl, the millions of lives, all the territory I fought for, bled for. It all seemed loud and pointless next to this small, quiet question. I placed my hand on his shoulder. His bones felt as small and fragile as a bird's. "Never," I said. My voice was rougher than I intended. "I will never let him, or anyone else, find you. You have my word." He seemed to lean into my hand, just for a second, a tiny, imperceptible movement of trust. It felt heavier than any weapon I had ever held. "She's awake, Mrs." Daria's voice came from the hall. Aurora was standing there, wearing a soft robe of dark silk that Mrs. Daria must have given her. My overcoat was gone. Her hair was damp and clean. The bruise on her face looked darker now, a violent purple against her pale skin. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were sharp, focused. "Micah, go with Mrs. Daria," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "She's going to make you pancakes." The boy looked at her, then at me, then back at his mother. He nodded and took the housekeeper's hand. When they were gone, Aurora walked into the room, but she did not sit. She wrapped her arms around herself, her gaze sweeping over the view, the art, the sheer, sterile wealth of the place. "You're Emilio Caruso," she said. It was not a question. "I am." Baylor. He works for your competition, the Vieri Circle." "He did." "And Northline Homes?" she asked, her voice dropping. I turned from the window to face her fully. "What about it?" "I'm an internal auditor for them. Or I was. It's a non-profit, supposed to build low-income housing." She took a shaky breath. "It's why he was there, why he kept coming back. I found something." "What did you find?" "Strange cash flows, huge sums, listed as community engagement funds or consulting fees. But they were just vanishing, being funneled into shell companies. It started 3 months ago. When I tried to flag it, my boss told me to stand down. When I didn't, Baylor showed up at my apartment for the first time to warn me." Her voice was clinical, detached, the voice of an auditor, not a victim. "I kept digging," she said. "I found a name, Aegis Logic. All the money was going through them. When Baylor found my notes this morning, that's when he—" She trailed off, but her eyes met mine. And just like that, the pieces clicked into place. The Vieri Circle needed a new way to wash their money. Northline Homes, a legitimate non-profit, was the perfect washing machine. Baylor was their enforcer, sent to keep the books clean by terrorizing the one person smart enough to read them. I had been looking for Vieri's new pipeline for weeks, and a 6-year-old boy, running for his life, had just delivered it to my front door. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was not just a victim. She was a witness, and she was leverage. But she was also the mother of the boy I had just given my word to. "You and Micah will stay here," I said. It was an order. "You are not safe anywhere else in this city, not until I clean up this mess." She stiffened. The defiance was back in her eyes, warring with the fear. "I'm not your prisoner. Mr. Caruso, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want your protection if it comes with a price." I walked toward her, stopping a few feet away. The morning light was between us. "You are not a burden, Aurora," I said, my voice low, "and you are not my prisoner." I let the silence hang for a beat. "You are a reason to do this right." I woke up to a smell that did not belong in my life-expensive coffee. It was not the burnt, acidic drip from the pot at the diner or the instant powder I used at home. This was rich, dark, and real. The sun was just beginning to hemorrhage light over the edge of the lake. painting the skyline in hues of pale gray and rose gold. The penthouse was silent, except for the low hum of the ventilation. I was in the guest suite, a room larger than my entire apartment at Hollow Bridge. The silk robe was still on, but I felt the phantom weight of my own clothes, the memory of Baylor's hands. I pushed the feeling down and followed the scent. Emilio was in the kitchen. It was a vast expanse of chrome and black marble. He was standing at the counter, his back to me, wearing dark trousers and a white shirt, the same one from yesterday, but the cuffs were rolled up, tight and precise, halfway to his elbows. I stopped. I watched the play of muscles in his forearms as he worked the French press. The veins stood out, clear and strong. He was a man of immense control, but those arms spoke of a different kind of strength, a physical power he kept leashed. He did not turn, but he spoke. "There is food in the refrigerator. Mrs. Daria stocked it. Help yourself." "I'm not hungry." My voice was a croak. He pushed a white ceramic mug across the marble counter toward me. "Drink this first." I walked over, wrapping the robe tighter. The bruise on my face throbbed, a dull ache that matched the one in my ribs. I took the mug. The heat was good. "You studied," he said, still not looking at me. "Forensic accounting." It was not a question. He had been busy. "I did. At Northwestern, I dropped out." "Why?" He finally turned, leaning back against the counter, crossing his arms. It made his chest and shoulders look broader. "I got pregnant with Micah," I said simply. "My scholarship did not cover a baby, so I left. Took a job auditing for nonprofits. It was flexible." "And your family?" "There is no one. Just me. And Micah." I looked him in the eye, letting him see that I was not ashamed of it. "What about you? You did not exactly grow up in a place like this." His expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. So fast I almost missed it. "No. I grew up at the St. Jude Quarters, an orphanage on the south side, before it was condemned." That explained it, the way he looked at Micah, the cold, hard shell he had built around himself. We were the same, in a way. Both of us had started with nothing. He had just chosen a different path to build an empire. "My tech team finished with Baylor's phone," he said, changing the subject, his voice all business again. He nodded toward his study. "I have the data. I need you to look at it." "You need me?" "You are the only one who knows what you are looking for. You are the only one who saw the original files before Baylor tried to scare you off." I followed him into the study. It was walled in glass, looking out over the living room and beyond it, the entire city. One wall was not glass. It was a bank of monitors, dark for now. He sat at a desk that was a single, massive slab of dark wood and tapped at a keyboard. The screens lit up, spreadsheets, bank transfers, decoded ledgers. My ledgers, the ones from Northline Homes. He kept copies. I breathed, stepping closer. He was skimming from Vieri, or he was keeping insurance. "It does not matter," Emilio said, standing up to join me. "Find me the link." I scanned the files, my mind slipping back into the familiar click of numbers and patterns. It was all there, the shell companies, the inflated invoices. And then I saw it, a recurring wire transfer. Once a month, for the last 3 months, $100,000 each time. "There," I said, pointing. "Aegis Logic, listed as Data Security Services. That is the name I found. That is the leak." Emilio stared at the screen, his expression intense. "Aegis Logic. They are new. Supposedly a high-end cybersecurity firm." "They are a laundry," I said, the pieces fitting together. "They are washing the Vieri money through Northline, then billing Northline for security services that do not exist. The money comes out clean on the other side." I was close to the glass wall, my hand on the monitor. I could feel the cold of the pain. I could also feel the heat rolling off Emilio, who was standing just behind my shoulder, his presence so intense it was almost a physical weight. I could smell the coffee on his breath, and something else. Soap, starch, and the faint, lingering scent of his cigars. I realized I was breathing fast, my own breath fogging the glass in front of me. I shivered, though the room was not cold. I felt him move. He did not touch me, and he stepped back, took the suit jacket that was hanging on the back of his chair, and draped it over my shoulders. It was heavy, made of the same dark wool as his overcoat, and it smelled just like him. It was possessive, protective. "You are safe here, Aurora," he said, his voice a low rumble. I turned to face him, the jacket clutched in my fists. "Am I Emilio?" We stood there for a long time. The tension was no longer just about the data on the screen. It was a wire pulled taut between us, vibrating with everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. His power, my fear, his protection, my defiance, and now, this proximity. "I need air," I whispered. He just nodded. He led me through the living room to a glass door I had not noticed. It slid open, and the sound of the city hit me. We were on the rooftop terrace. The wind was relentless up here, 34 stories high, ripping in off the lake, cold and clean. It tore at my hair, pulling it loose from the knot I had made. The sun was fully up, but it offered no warmth. We stood at the glass barrier, looking down. "He will never stop," I said, not to him, but to the wind. "Vieri, men like him, they will never stop." "No," he agreed, "they will not." I turned to him. The wind whipped his dark hair across his forehead. He looked less like a boss and more like something elemental. "I need to know the truth. What do you really want from this? From me?" "It is not just about stopping Vieri. This is not just about business. It is revenge, is not it?" He was silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "It is always about business," he said, his voice flat. "But revenge is a motivator. Vieri is sloppy. He's bringing a kind of heat to this city I have spent 10 years trying to cool. He uses men like Baylor. He hurts women. He orphans children." He finally looked at me, and his eyes were dark, all the ice gone, replaced by a cold fire. "So, yes, I want revenge, but I also want a cleaner city for that kid in there." He meant Micah. The wire between us snapped. I did not know I was going to do it until I did it. I stepped forward, into his space, into the shield of his body that blocked the worst of the wind. I reached up, my hand grabbing the collar of his shirt. He looked down at me, his eyes widening almost imperceptibly. He was surprised. I had caught Emilio Caruso off guard. "Are you sure, Aurora?" he asked, his voice rougher than I had ever heard it. I did not trust my voice, I just nodded. I pulled him down. My lips met his. It was not a soft kiss. It was desperate. It was a collision. It was all the fear and anger and terror of the last few days, and the first moment of safety I had felt, all crashing together. His lips were firm, unyielding for a second, and then they softened, responding to mine, taking control. It was not a Hollywood kiss. It was deep, possessive, and overwhelming. His arms came around me, pulling me tight against him, one hand splayed across my back, the other settling on my waist, his thumb tracing the outline of my fractured rib through the silk and the wool. He was gentle, so careful not to hurt me. But his grip was iron. He was holding me like he was staking a claim, branding me as his. I could feel the frantic, heavy beat of his heart pounding against my own, or maybe it was just mine. I could not tell where I ended, and he began. He tasted like coffee and power. Just as quickly as it started, I pulled back, panting, my forehead resting against his chest. His heart was hammering. He did not let me go. He just held me, his chin resting on the top of my head, shielding me from the wind. We stood there, breathing each other in. His radio, clipped to his belt, crackled to life, breaking the moment. "Boss, you there?" It was Joey's voice. Emilio did not move, but his voice was tight. "Here. We got a problem. The lakefront cameras, the ones covering the pier, they were on a loop for 2 hours last night. Just checked the logs. And we got a positive ID on 2 of Vieri's men. They were not just there. They were at the pier, poking around your container, Aegis Logic just opened a new office 3 blocks from Ravenspur. I felt Emilio's body go rigid. He leaned back, his hands still on my waist, and looked down at me. The fire was back in his eyes, but it was different now. It was calculated. "They are not just testing me," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "They are targeting my home base." He looked past me, at the city. "He's trying to be a barbarian using fists. It is time to upgrade the plan." He looked back at me, his gaze so intense it pinned me in place. "We hit their brains, not their fists. We hit their money. I need your help, Aurora, officially." "You want me to be your accountant," I said, my voice shaking. "I want you to be my financial advisor. My secret. I want you to tear their entire empire down from the inside, using only a keyboard." This was the price. I knew it, but I also knew he was the only one who could keep Micah safe. "Yes," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I will help you, but I have conditions." "Name them." "Micah, he's protected, always. First, above you, above me, above the business. He's never, ever to be used as leverage or put at risk. He's out." "Done," Emilio said without hesitation. "He is my ward. That is my word. What else?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Your business. I will not touch it. But the work I do for you, the result. It cannot be used to fund human trafficking or drug distribution. I will not trade one monster for another. I will not help you clean your money just to make it dirtier somewhere else." I expected him to laugh. I expected him to refuse. He held my gaze for a long time. I could see the calculation, the weighing of options. Finally, he nodded slowly. "The Caruso Consortium does not deal in human lives," he said, his voice firm, "and we are moving out of narcotics. It is a messy business." He took one of his hands from my waist and held it out to me. "You have my word, the Aurora rule. Any operation you advise on, any funds you recover, will be clean of both, effective immediately, for the entire organization." I looked at his outstretched hand. This was it. A deal with the devil, but a devil who had just promised to protect my son and clean up his own act. I put my hand in his. His grip was warm and strong. "Then let's get to work." I said, "My study." The room of glass and screens became our war room. For 2 days, Aurora lived in front of those monitors, fueled by Mrs. Daria's coffee and a cold, sharp fury I found I respected immensely. She was not just an auditor, she was a hunter. I watched her work. She fell into a trance, her fingers flying across the keyboard, her mind navigating the complex architecture of Vieri's greed. She was brilliant. She took the data from Baylor's phone, the data my team had spent 36 hours decrypting, and used it as a key. She did not just follow the money from Northline Homes to Aegis Logic, she found where it went next. "It's not just a laundry, Emilio," she said on the second afternoon, her voice tight with concentration. She pointed to the main screen. "Aegis Logic kicks back 60% of its fees to a new entity, a consulting firm." A name flashed on the screen, Urban Integrity Commission. "I have never heard of them," I said, standing behind her, my hands clasped behind my back. "You would not," she said, her eyes alight. "It's a quasi-public agency, a phantom, set up by the city council 3 months ago to oversee urban renewal. It has a board of directors, a fancy logo, and no actual office. It's a black hole." She mapped the flow. Dirty money from various street operations went into Northline Homes as donations. Northline paid Aegis Logic for security. Aegis Logic paid the Urban Integrity Commission for consulting. The UIC then approved Vieri's construction bids, using laundered funds to outbid legitimate competitors. "It's a closed loop," I murmured. "He's using his own dirty money to steal the city's biggest contracts." "He's not just stealing, he's buying," she said. She typed, and a new set of accounts appeared. "Look at this. The Blue Lantern Fund. It's listed as a scholarship program for underprivileged youth, run by the UIC. Let me guess," I said, "it's not..." It's paid out exactly 3 scholarships in 3 months for $50,000 each, all to family members of city councilmen, the ones who vote on the construction bids. She swiveled in the chair to look up at me. The grim satisfaction of a prophetess proved right, etched on her face. He's not just washing money, Emilio. He's buying the city, one councilman at a time. My radio chirped. It was Mina. "Boss, I'm in." Mina, with a forged ID and a perfectly tailored business suit, had spent the day at the UIC's listed address, posing as a state auditor. "What do you see, Mina?" "Nothing." Her voice came back, crisp and low. "The office is a ghost, just a mail drop service." But the building manager was chatty. He said the UIC auditors are coming in tomorrow night, a special weekend audit. He's been instructed to give them access to the building's server room at 10 p.m. Aurora and I locked eyes. "That's not an audit," she whispered. "That's evidence destruction. They're going to wipe the servers clean." They know there's a leak, I said. Baylor's disappearance has them spooked. They're scrubbing the record. I looked back at the screen. "Aurora, can you get in those servers before they do?" "Not from here. Not without a key, but—" Baylor's phone. "It's not just a log. Emilio, it's a key. He had credentials, access tokens. If I can get a hardline into that server, I do not need to hack it. I can unlock it." "Then you will have it," I said. "Mina, stand down. We go in tonight." "Boss, one more thing," Mina said. "That photo you asked for, it just came through." A second later, an image flashed on my personal tablet. It was grainy. Long lens, taken at night, but it was clear enough. The Lakeshore rail yard. Santovieri himself, his silver hair unmistakable, standing next to a very nervous-looking Trent Baylor. They were pointing at a specific line of shipping containers. "That was taken 2 nights ago," Mina's voice said, "right before Baylor went to see Aurora. Intel says the rainfall protocol is tomorrow night, a major cash transfer." "He was not just an enforcer," I said, looking at the photo. "He was Vieri's bagman for the whole operation." I looked at Aurora. "They are not just wiping the servers tomorrow. They are moving the physical cash. They are liquidating the entire fund." The timeline had just accelerated. We did not have days. We had hours. "I am contacting a friend." I said. I moved to my secure line, a phone that was not connected to any network, a direct point-to-point encrypted line. My contact was not a cop. It was a man deep inside the Interstate Financial Crimes Directorate, a man who believed in the law but had seen it bought and sold too many times. He hated Vieri. I laid it out, fast. I have the whole network, Northline, UIC, Blue Lantern. I have the account numbers. I have the key to their servers. "It's not enough, Emilio." His voice, digitized and anonymous, came back. "Allegations are not evidence. I cannot get a warrant on your word." "I am not asking for a warrant," and I said, "I am giving you a gift. I have Baylor's encrypted phone. It's the Rosetta Stone. It holds every transaction, every bribe. It links Vieri directly to the Blue Lantern Fund. Tomorrow night, Vieri's men are wiping the UIC servers. I am going to stop them. My associate is going to mirror those servers. At the same time, Vieri is moving the cash at the Lakeshore rail yard." "That's too many moving parts. You'll get burned." "You let me worry about that. All I need from you is an anonymous tip line, a secure digital locker. When I get that data, I am uploading it, and when I upload it, I am also uploading the key from Baylor's phone. You will have everything you need to freeze his assets and indict the entire city council. Can you act on it?" There was a long pause. "If the data is what you say it is, yes. The moment it hits my desk, I can have tactical teams moving in 30 minutes. "Good." I hung up. I turned to the team. Mina and Joey had re-entered the study, their faces grim. Aurora was still at the monitor. "Here is the plan," I said. "Joey, you are on signals. I want every camera, every cell tower, every piece of spectrum in a 5-block radius of the UIC building and the rail yard. You are our ears." "Done," he said. "Mina, you are on counter surveillance. You are my ghost. The Vieri team at the UIC building. They are not walking out. You are the perimeter. No one gets in, no one gets out except us." She nodded, her eyes cold. "Aurora," I said. She looked up. "You are not just an auditor anymore. You are my eyes. You will be here, in this room, plugged into our comms. You will guide Mina's team into that server room, and you will be the one to download the data. You are the brain of this operation." "And you?" she asked, her voice low. "I'm going to the rail yard. Vieri is not just moving cash. He's there to meet Baylor. Baylor never showed. He's nervous. I'm going to reassure him." "You are going to walk into a meet with Santo Vieri. I am going to take back my territory," I said. The room was silent. The plan was set, insane, but set. Mina and Joey left to prep their teams. I was left alone with Aurora. I heard a small laugh from the hallway. "Mrs." Daria was walking past the study door, holding Micah's hand. He was bundled in a coat. "Mrs. Daria," I called out. She stopped. "Sir, I was just taking Micah out. I thought the Museum of Lake Haven Science, he likes the dinosaurs." I looked at Aurora. Her face was pale with tension, but her eyes softened as she looked at her son. "A good idea," I said. "His routine is too predictable. Hollow Bridge, the market, this building. He needs to be somewhere else. Somewhere public, but anonymous. Take a different car. Take my driver." "Of course, sir." "Mrs." Daria said, and they were gone. The quiet in the penthouse was heavy. Aurora turned back to the screens, but her hands were trembling. She rubbed them together, trying to stop the shake. I walked over to the bar, poured 2 glasses of water, and handed one to her. Our fingers brushed. She looked at my hand, at the back of it, as it rested on the desk. What happened here? She was pointing to a scar, a pale, jagged line that ran from my knuckle to my wrist. It was old, but it was deep. I looked at it. I had not thought about it in years. A long time ago, at St. Jude's. The orphanage. I was 19, just aged out, but I still slept in the alleyway behind it. Some older boys were trying to take a loaf of bread from a new kid, maybe 9 years old. Kid was stupid, tried to fight them. I paused, remembering the glint of the cheap knife in the streetlight. I stepped in. One of them had a knife. I got my hand in the way. "What happened to the kid?" she asked. "He ran. Dropped the bread, but he ran. I never saw him again." "You saved him," she whispered. "A stranger." "He was alone," I said, my voice rough. "No one should be alone like that." I felt her hand cover mine on the desk. Her skin was warm. Her fingers were small, but her grip was strong. She squeezed my hand, the one with the scar. "Don't be alone anymore, Emilio," she said. I looked at our hands, her pale skin against my scarred, darker flesh. I did not pull away. I just turned my hand over and laced my fingers with hers, a silent promise. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall. They hit the glass walls of the study, one by one, like tiny taps on the window. Lake Haven was turning into a black and white film, the stage being set for the storm. And for the first time, I was not going into it alone. The lakeshore rail yard was a city of steel ghosts. Hundreds of shipping containers were stacked 7 and 8 high, creating narrow, lightless canyons. The only illumination came from the tall sodium lamps, casting a sickly yellow glow that looked like pollen, like toxic dust hanging in the damp air. The rain from earlier had stopped, but everything dripped. The air smelled of rust, diesel, and the deep, cold water of the lake just 100 yards away. This was Vieri's bank. My team was in place. Mina was a shadow on a gantry crane 200 yards south, rifle at her side, but her real weapon was the thermal scope. My other men held the perimeter, silent and invisible. And Aurora was everywhere. She was in my ear, a quiet presence on the encrypted channel. She was in the sky, her fingers guiding the silent, high-altitude drone that was our eye. And Joey, he was the ghost in their machine. From a van parked a mile away, he began the attack. It was not an explosion. It was quieter. He injected a packet of false data into Aegis Logic's secure network, a data bleed, coded to look like an internal leak, originating from a server right here in the rail yard. We listened to their comms. Panic. Who the hell is logged into server 3? It's not us. Someone's dumping the rainfall files. Shut it down. Shut it down now. They could not. Joey held the door open, making it look like a catastrophic failure from their end, their IT team. The Aegis Logic auditors were blind. Vieri's on his way, a panicked voice shouted. He wants to know who. He's sending Baylor to the container. Get Baylor. The bait was taken. A black sedan, Vieri's rolled into the yard and stopped under one of the buzzing yellow lights. The back door opened, and Trent Baylor practically fell out. He was not the brute from the apartment. His arm was in a high-end sling. His face was pale, and he was sweating through his expensive suit. I stepped out from between two massive red containers. I walked toward him, my footsteps the only sound in the yard. I did not hurry. I let him watch me come. He flinched, his good hand twitching toward a pocket. I would not, I said, my voice carrying easily in the damp air. I stopped 10 feet from him. We were in a small clearing, surrounded by steel walls. The car's engine was still running, a low, nervous rumble. Caruso, he stammered. Santo just wants to talk. He wants to know what you want. This was a mistake. This was, I agreed. I was not looking at him. I was looking at the sedan. Vieri was not in it, just a driver and another guard. I walked to the hood of the car, right in front of him. I placed a small, matte black box on the metal. It was heavy, and it made a solid thunk. What is that? Baylor asked, his eyes wide. A degausser, military grade. The second you try to wipe that phone in your pocket, the one Vieri gave you, this box will send out a pulse. It will not just wipe the phone, it will melt the circuits. It will turn your only piece of insurance into a brick of glass and plastic. His face went white. He knew I was not talking about the phone Baylor used. I was talking about the other phone, the one he was using to skim from Vieri, the one with his insurance files. His hand, the one in his pocket, froze. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper he had to strain to hear. You are not afraid of me, Baylor. You are afraid of Vieri. But right now, you are most afraid of the files you are holding, the ones that prove you are a thief. I had him. He was caught between me and Vieri. Give me the phone, Trent, I said, and I'll protect you from Santo. He was shaking his head, trying to speak. When my earpiece crackled, it was Mina. Her voice was ice. Emilio, we have a problem. There's a truck, an 18-wheeler, dark blue, no markings. It's parked in the east access lane. It was not on any of the manifests I checked. It just turned its engine on. A traitor. My mind flashed to the plan. Only 5 people knew the exact layout of our perimeter. Me, Mina, Joey, and my 2 senior guards. Aurora, I said, my voice low, put the drone on that truck. Moving, her voice came back, tight and stressed. I could hear the faint click, click, click of her keyboard, her nerves firing through the line. I see it. It's just sitting there. No thermal signal from the trailer. Wait, the cab. The heat signature is wrong. It's shielded. Military-grade insulation. Why is it shielded? My blood ran cold. A shielded cab did not mean they were hiding people. It meant they were hiding electronics. It was a signals jamming center. It was a command van. This was not Vieri's panicked response. This was their trap. Mina, pull back. I said, move to... Boss? Mina cut me off. Her voice was sharp, urgent. I have another problem, a bigger one. Talk to me. Joey, he's gone. He's not in the van. What do you mean, gone? I sent a man to check his physical location, just in case. The van is empty. He's just... gone. Before I could process it, my comms unit hissed. Static. Boss Mina. It was one of my perimeter guards. My comms are... I'm getting... interference... The line dissolved into white noise. Baylor was watching me, his fear turning into a sick, dawning comprehension. He was starting to understand that I was not the predator here. A new voice crackled in my ear, overriding our channel. It was distorted, digitized, but I knew the cadence. "He's not in the van. Emilio," the voice said. "He's right here, with me." It was Joey. The sodium lights in the yard clicked off, all of them, at once. We were plunged into absolute, terrifying darkness. The only light was the faint, misty glow from the city, miles away. And then, a new set of lights. The blinding, high-beam headlights of the blue truck, which was now moving, blocking the main exit to the rail yard. And more lights, from the gantries, from the spaces between the containers, floodlights snapping on, one after another, painting the clearing in a sterile white light. We were not in a clearing. We were in a kill box. Men were walking out from between the containers, at least 20 of them. They wore dark tactical gear. They held rifles. My radio, the one connected to Aurora, was a wall of static. Joey was jamming us. A single bolt of lightning, a freak of the storm, split the sky, illuminating the scene in a brilliant, flickering blue. For a fraction of a second, I saw everything. I saw Baylor, who had dropped to his knees, his hands over his head. I saw Mina, a tiny figure on the gantry, already boxed in by 2 men. I saw the men, Vieri's men, but they were not Vieri's men. They were too disciplined. Aegis logic. My mind flashed to Aurora, alone in the penthouse, staring at dead screens, the status lights on her console blinking red, one by one. I saw her hand, the one that had held mine, shaking as it gripped the mouse. The static in my ear vanished. One channel, clean, crisp, and clear. "Emilio, can you hear me?" It was Aurora. Her voice was not panicked. It was cold. It was calm. It was the calm of the eye of the storm. "Loud and clear," I said, my hand moving to the weapon under my jacket. "Joey is running a broadband jam, but he left one frequency open, a high bandwidth channel, for his drone. I'm on it. He does not know I'm here." I saw it, the drone. It was no longer high. It was sweeping low over the yard, its red light blinking. "He's not jamming us," I said. "He's monitoring us." "I know," she said. Her voice was tight, but the tremble was gone. "Mina, I see you. You have 2 targets on the gantry, 5 meters behind you. Emilio, you have an exit. It is not the rails." I looked at her, even though she was miles away. "Plan Delta," she said. It was a contingency I had built into the penthouse system, a theoretical plan for an overwhelming force. I never thought I would use it. "The water line. Emilio," she said. "There's a storm culvert 2 containers down from your left. It's flooded from the rain. It's the only way out. I'm moving the drone. I'm going to give them a new target. Go. Now." The men were advancing, their rifles up. I looked at my 2 men who were exposed with me. They were looking at me, waiting for the order. I put my thumb on the transmitter. "You heard her." It was the first time in my entire career I had given command to someone else. "Move!" The drone overhead suddenly dropped, its rotors screaming, and shot a spotlight directly into the face of the heavy truck, blinding the driver. The first shots rang out, deafening in the steel canyon, as my men and I broke for the darkness of the water line. We had escaped the first net. But I knew, as I slid into the cold, rushing water, that Joey had not just betrayed me. He had used me to bring V when I write the response. I will make sure to adhere to all the user's constraints. I will write in English, using the first-person perspective of Emilio. The style will be tactical action plus quiet romance, nip day caught truok bung no, like a tightly wound spring. I will incorporate all the plot points from the user's outline for Part 6, including the rail yard setting, the trap for Baylor, the degausser, the line, "You're not afraid of me," Mina's discovery, Aurora's tension, the reveal of Joey's disappearance, the lightning, Aurora's Plan Delta command, and Emilio's affirmation of her command, "Listen to her." The length will be approximately 1,000 to 1,500 words. I will ensure all numbers are written in spoken form. GG, 10%, 8 o'clock, I will strictly avoid any icons, special characters, placeholders, or the repetitive guion style. I will also double-check the text for any accidental or non-English phrases before outputting the final response. Constraint checklist and confidence score. Write part 6, yes. English, yes. 1,000 to 1,500 words, yes. Use provided plot points, yes. First-person POV Emilio, yes. Style, tactical, tense, yes. Spoken form numbers, yes. No icons, yes. No special characters hash, asterisk, yes. No placeholders, notes, yes. No. Unit repetition, yes. Check and fix, errors, yes. Check and fix non-English errors, yes. Output and chat box, yes. No title for the part, yes. Confidence score 5/5. Mental sandbox simulation. I'll start by setting the scene at the rail yard, focusing on the atmosphere. Lakeshore Rail Yard was a city of steel ghosts. The sodium lamps cast a yellow dust. I'll describe the trap Joey feeding fake signals to Aegis Logic. My team was set. Joey, our ghost in the machine, began to feed the line, a signal spoof. Aegis Logic's comms lit up with panic. This will force Baylor out. They pushed Baylor out, noticing that he was supposed to negotiate. The confrontation, I stepped from the shadows. I placed the black box on the hood. It's a degausser, Trent, you hit delete, and that phone becomes a brick. You're not afraid of me. You're afraid of the files you're holding. Complication 1, Mina. My earpiece crackled. Mina's voice, cold as the steel she was perched on. Emilio, we have an unscheduled guest, an 18-wheeler. This is the traitor clue. Complication 2. Aurora. I could picture Aurora in the war room. Her heart hammering. Her voice came over the line. I'm moving the drone, checking that truck's blind spot. Complication 3. The big one. A new call. One of Mina's team. Boss. Joey's van. He's gone. He's not in the channel. The climax. Just as the words hit, the sky ripped open, lightning. And in that flash, I saw it, the truck. It wasn't Vieri's. It was tactical. This wasn't a trap for Baylor. It was for me. Aurora's command, the comms hissed, then a single, clear voice. Aurora. She'd found a back channel. Her voice was shaking, but her words were iron. Plan Delta. They're on the rails. Retreat via the waterline. Now, Emilio. Emilio's validation. I looked at my men. They were looking at me. I keyed the mic. You heard her. It was the first time I'd ever ceded command. The escape. We moved. We escaped the initial loop, but the spring had just been wound impossibly tight. The game was bigger than I knew. This flow incorporates all elements, maintains the tense style, and adheres to all constraints. I will proceed with writing. Aurora's men. He's not just betraying me. He's part of Aegis. This was a setup from the start. Mina, I'm heading to the waterline, I said into the static-filled line, hoping she could hear me. I'll cover you. Her voice, distant and strained, shot back. We were in the fight of our lives, and the only person who knew the way out was a woman, 34 stories up, looking at a map of a battle she had never been trained for, and I trusted her more than any man I had in the field. The Lakeshore Rail Yard was a city of steel ghosts. Hundreds of shipping containers were stacked 7 and 8 high, creating narrow, lightless canyons. The only illumination came from the tall sodium lamps, casting a sickly yellow glow that looked like pollen, like toxic dust hanging in the damp air. The rain from earlier had stopped, but everything dripped. The air smelled of rust, diesel, and the deep, cold water of the lake just 100 yards away. This was Vieri's bank. My team was in place. Mina was a shadow on a gantry crane 200 yards south, rifle at her side, but her real weapon was the thermal scope. My other men held the perimeter, silent and invisible. And Aurora. Aurora was everywhere. She was in my ear, a quiet presence on the encrypted channel. She was in the sky, her fingers guiding the silent, high-altitude drone that was our eye. And Joey, he was the ghost in their machine, from a van parked a mile away. He began the attack. It was not an explosion. It was quieter. He injected a packet of false data into Aegis Logic's secure network, a data bleed, coded to look like an internal leak, originating from a server right here in the rail yard. We listened to their comms. Panic. Who the hell is logged into server 3? It's not us. Someone's dumping the rainfall files. Shut it down. Shut it down now. They could not. Joey held the door open, making it look like a catastrophic failure from their end, their IT team. The Aegis Logic auditors were blind. Vieri's on his way, a panicked voice shouted. He wants to know who. He's sending Baylor to the container. Get Baylor. The bait was taken. A black sedan, Vieri's, rolled into the yard and stopped under one of the buzzing yellow lights. The back door opened, and Trent Baylor practically fell out. He was not the brute from the apartment. His arm was in a high-end sling. His face was pale, and he was sweating through his expensive suit. I stepped out from between two massive red containers. I walked toward him. My footsteps the only sound in the yard. I did not hurry. I let him watch me come. He flinched, his good hand twitching toward a pocket. I would not, I said, my voice carrying easily in the damp air. I stopped 10 feet from him. We were in a small clearing, surrounded by steel walls. The car's engine was still running, a low, nervous rumble. Caruso, he stammered. Santo just wants to talk. He wants to know what you want. This was a mistake. This was? I agreed. I was not looking at him. I was looking at the sedan. Vieri was not in it, just a driver and another guard. I walked to the hood of the car, right in front of him. I placed a small, matte black box on the metal. It was heavy, and it made a solid thunk. What is that? Baylor asked, his eyes wide. A degausser, military grade. The second you try to wipe that phone in your pocket, the one Vieri gave you, this box will send out a pulse. It will not just wipe the phone, it will melt the circuits. It will turn your only piece of insurance into a brick of glass and plastic. His face went white. He knew I was not talking about the phone Baylor used. I was talking about the other phone, the one he was using to skim from Vieri, the one with his insurance files. His hand, the one in his pocket, froze. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper he had to strain to hear. You are not afraid of me, Baylor. You are afraid of Vieri. But right now, you are most afraid of the files you are holding, the ones that prove you are a thief. I had him. He was caught between me and Vieri. Give me the phone, Trent T, I said, and I'll protect you from Santo. He was shaking his head, trying to speak. When my earpiece crackled, it was Mina. Her voice was ice. Emilio, we have a problem. There's a truck, an 18-wheeler, dark blue. No markings. It's parked in the east access lane. It was not on any of the manifests I checked. It just turned its engine on. A traitor. My mind flashed to the plan. Only 5 people knew the exact layout of our perimeter. Me, Mina, Joey, and my 2 senior guards. Aurora, I said, my voice low, put the drone on that truck. Moving. Her voice came back, tight and stressed. I could hear the faint click, click, click of her keyboard, her nerves firing through the line. I see it. It's just sitting there. No thermal signal from the trailer. Wait, the cab. The heat signature is wrong. It's shielded, military-grade insulation. Why is it shielded? My blood ran cold. A shielded cab did not mean they were hiding people. It meant they were hiding electronics. It was a signals jamming center. It was a command van. This was not Vieri's panicked response. This was their trap. Mina, pull back, I said. Move to Nishi. Boss. Mina cut me off. Her voice was sharp, urgent. I have another problem, a bigger one. Talk to me. Joey, he's gone. He's not in the van. What do you mean, gone? I sent a man to check his physical location, just in case. The van is empty. He's just gone. Before I could process it, my comms unit hissed, "Static." "Boss, Mina," it was one of my perimeter guards. My comms are, I'm getting interference." The line dissolved into white noise. Baylor was watching me, his fear turning into a sick, dawning comprehension. He was starting to understand that I was not the predator here. A new voice crackled in my ear, overriding our channel. It was distorted, digitized, but I knew the cadence. "He's not in the van, Emilio," the voice said. "He's right here, with me." It was Joey. The sodium lights in the yard clicked off, all of them. At once, we were plunged into absolute, terrifying darkness. The only light was the faint, misty glow from the city, miles away. And then, a new set of lights. The blinding, high-beam headlights of the blue truck, which was now moving, blocking the main exit to the rail yard. And more lights, from the gantries, from the spaces between the containers, floodlights snapping on, one after another, painting the clearing in a sterile white light. We were not in a clearing, we were in a kill box. Men were walking out from between the containers, at least 20 of them. They wore dark tactical gear. They held rifles. My radio, the one connected to Aurora, was a wall of static. Joey was jamming us. A single bolt of lightning, a freak of the storm, split the sky, illuminating the scene in a brilliant, flickering blue. For a fraction of a second, I saw everything. I saw Baylor, who had dropped to his knees, his hands over his head. I saw Mina, a tiny figure on the gantry, already boxed in by 2 men. I saw the men, Vieri's men, but they were not Vieri's men. They were too disciplined. Aegis logic. My mind flashed to Aurora, alone in the penthouse, staring at dead screens, the status lights on her console blinking red, one by one. I saw her hand, the one that had held mine, shaking as it gripped the mouse. The static in my ear vanished. One channel, clean, crisp, and clear. "Emilio, can you hear me?" It was Aurora. Her voice was not panicked. It was cold. It was calm. It was the calm of the eye of the storm. "Loud and clear," I said, my hand moving to the weapon under my jacket. "Joey is running a broadband jam, but he left one frequency open, a high bandwidth channel. For his drone, I'm on it. He does not know I'm here." I saw it, the drone. It was no longer high. It was sweeping low over the yard, its red light blinking. "He's not jamming us," I said. "He's monitoring us." "I know," she said. Her voice was tight, but the tremble was gone. "Mina, I see you. You have 2 targets on the gantry, 5 meters behind you. Emilio, you have an exit. It is not the rails." I looked at her, even though she was miles away. "Plan Delta," she said. It was a contingency I had built into the penthouse system, a theoretical plan for an overwhelming force. I never thought I would use it. "The water line. Emilio," she said. "There's a storm culvert 2 containers down from your left. It's flooded from the rain. It's the only way out. I'm moving the drone. I'm going to give them a new target. Go. Now." The men were advancing, their rifles up. I looked at my 2 men who were exposed with me. They were looking at me, waiting for the order. I put my thumb on the transmitter. "You heard her." It was the first time in my entire career I had given command to someone else. "Move." The drone overhead suddenly dropped, its rotors screaming, and shot a spotlight directly into the face of the heavy truck, blinding the driver. The first shots rang out, deafening in the steel canyon, as my men and I broke for the darkness of the water line. We had escaped the first net. But I knew, as I slid into the cold, rushing water, that Joey had not just betrayed me. He had used me to bring my entire operation into the light. The game was bigger than I ever knew, and the spring had just been wound impossibly tight. We returned to Harbor Point not as victors, but as survivors. We came up through the service tunnels, soaked from the storm culvert, smelling of cold water and ozone. The penthouse, once a symbol of my impenetrable control, now felt like an exposed nerve. The war room was a wreck. The screens were dead, frozen on the static hash Joey had left behind. He wasn't just a mole, Emilio. Mina was already there, changed into dry clothes, her face a mask of cold fury. She had slipped away from the gantry in the chaos, a ghost in her own right. He was a candidate. She laid it out. Joey Crest had been playing me for 6 months. He was not working for Vieri. He was working to replace him. He had formed his own alliance with the tech mercenaries at Aegis Logic. Using Vieri's resources, his offer to Vieri was simple. I will deliver Emilio Caruso and all of his transport routes. In exchange, I take Lake Haven. The rail yard was not a trap for Baylor. It was a stage. Joey was supposed to deliver my head to Vieri and Aegis in one clean stroke. He underestimated us, a voice said from the doorway. Aurora was standing there, wrapped in a thick robe, her face pale and drawn, but her eyes were on fire. He underestimated you. She meant me, but she also meant herself. He is running, I said. He exposed his entire hand and he came away with nothing. Not nothing, Mina corrected. He still has the UIC, he still has the Blue Lantern Fund, and he still has Vieri, who is now terrified and desperate. A new alert pinged on Mina's tablet. Baylor, he's on the move. He just left his safe house. He's heading back to the Aegis Logic office. Joey is forcing his hand, Aurora said, moving past me. Her focus absolute. The rail yard failed. They need their backup. The mobile server, Baylor is the only one with the credentials to move it. Let him, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. Let the fish take the bait. I looked at Aurora. I want that server. It is the only thing that physically links Vieri to the bribes. It is the key to the Blue Lantern Fund. Then we are going to need a new war room, she said. We moved. We abandoned the penthouse and descended to a sublevel I had built for just such an occasion. A windowless, soundproofed bunker encased in concrete and steel, with its own power and a hardline connection that bypassed the building's main grid. For the next 12 hours, Aurora worked. She was no longer just an auditor. She was a digital bloodhound. She slept for an hour in a cot, but I found her awake at 3 a.m, her face lit by the glow of the monitors. Aegis is not the head, she murmured, more to herself than to me. They are just the arm. Joey is not smart enough to build this infrastructure. He is a soldier. She typed, her fingers a blur. She was tracing the ownership of Aegis Logic through shell companies in 3 different countries until she found the source. Here, the Rook Syndicate. It was a name I knew, a ghost story. A high-end mercenary outfit that specialized in technology. They did not just offer cybersecurity, they ran corporate espionage, destabilized small governments, and managed private wars for the highest bidder. They have a contract, she said, her voice dropping, an urban development contract with the Urban Integrity Commission. The web was complete. The city council was paying the UIC was paying the Rook Syndicate through Aegis was washing Vieri's money and protecting Joey, their chosen puppet. They are not just trying to take over the city's criminal underworld, I said. They are trying to own the city itself. The tension in the bunker was so thick I could barely breathe. We were no longer fighting a rival family. We were fighting a corporation with its own army. A soft chime came from Mrs. Daria's tablet. She had been quietly bringing us coffee and food, a silent guardian. Sir, she said, holding the tablet out to me. It is Micah, for his mother. Aurora looked up, her eyes blurred with exhaustion. She looked at the screen, at her son's face, and she could not move. She was too far gone, too deep in the fight. I took the tablet. I will talk to him. I walked to the corner of the room. Micah's face, small and sleepy, filled the screen. He was in his pajamas. Emilio, he whispered, confused. Where is my mom? She is right here. Micah, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. She's working very hard on something very important. She is safe. Oh, he seemed to accept this. Can you tell her I saw the big T-Rex at the museum? It was so big. Its head was... wow. I will tell her. I promised. And, he said, his voice dropping, did you forget the airplanes? You said, You said you would teach me to make the paper airplanes. I looked at this child, his world reduced to a single, simple promise. And I looked at the maps of data on the wall, a war for an entire city. This was the anchor. This was why. I have not forgotten. Micah, I said, my voice rough. Tomorrow, when this is done, I will teach you how to make one fly all the way across the room. I promise. Okay, good night, Emilio. Good night, Micah. The screen went dark. I turned back. Aurora was watching me, her expression unreadable. Her hand was at her throat, clutching something. I saw it, a small, bright blue plastic hair clip, his. Her lucky charm. Mina entered the bunker, her boots silent on the concrete. I have the end game. She brought up a file. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, City Glass Hall, a special, closed-door housing council meeting. They are pushing through a new luxury condo project. Aurora was instantly at the screen, her fatigue vanishing. The Mercer Viaduct project? I saw this. It is Vieries. They are using the Blue Lantern Fund as the primary investor. They are trying to wash $40 million in one single vote. They were liquidating. They were pulling all the money out, cleaning it and vanishing. Then we do not stop the meeting, I said. My decision made, we detonate it. I looked at Aurora. Package the data, everything. The Northline files, the Aegis transfers, the Rook Syndicate contracts, the Blue Lantern Fund bribes, Baylor's phone data. Package it for who? For everyone, I said. We are done fighting in the shadows. We are going to attack them in the light. I gave her the secure access code to my contact at the IFCD. But not just them. Send the entire file to the Lake Haven Ledger. We go public. We burn the ground they stand on. Aurora's fingers flew. She was building the digital bomb. Just as she was setting the encryption, the lights in the bunker flickered, the main monitors died. Backup power. A low red emergency light kicked in. They are attacking us, she said. Her voice was ice. The Rook Syndicate. They knew we were here. They were hitting the building's grid, trying to cut us off. But Aurora was already on a separate terminal, one powered by an independent battery, its screen a dull green. I'm not on their grid. I'm pushing the file, bypassing the hardline. I am uploading it all. To a commercial satellite, a backup channel they do not know about. It is slow, but it is going. We stood in the red gloom, the only sound the quiet hum of the servers. The file was uploading, 1%, 2%. We were alone, just the two of us, waiting for the bomb to go live. She turned to me, her face barely visible in the dark. You are going there tomorrow, are not you? She whispered, to the City Glass Hall. I am. If you do not come back, Emilio. I reached out, my thumb brushing the fading bruise on her cheek. You have the codes. You have the accounts. You know where the money is. I will finish it, she said. It was not a promise. It was a statement of fact. I will burn them all to the ground, but you will come back. She stepped closer, into my space. I could feel the warmth of her body. She looked up at me, her gaze holding mine. I leaned down, our foreheads touched. I could feel her breath, warm and shaky against my skin. Aurora, I whispered. It was not like the first kiss on the terrace, the one that was all fire and desperation. This was slow. It was deep. It was a silent vow in the dark, a promise made in the heart of the war. Her hands came up to grip my shirt, holding on, anchoring me. My arms went around her, pulling her against me, holding her safe, my hand buried in her hair. It was a kiss that sealed our pact, a moment of profound, terrifying, and absolute trust. I pulled back, just an inch, our lips still brushing. I will come back, I promised. The City Glass Hall was not a government building. It was a cathedral of commerce, a massive atrium of steel and glass where Lake Haven's elite came to bless their own deals. Today, it was a courtroom, and the city council was on trial. The room was packed. Media from every local station lined the back walls, their cameras hungry. The council members sat on a raised dais, looking annoyed and self-important. They had been forced into this emergency hearing by a public outcry I had manufactured, fueled by the first anonymous leaks to the Lake Haven Ledger. And at the podium, in the center of it all, was Aurora. She was not the woman from the apartment. She was not the victim. She wore a simple, dark gray suit that misses. Daria had tailored, her hair was pulled back, the bruise on her cheek had faded to a pale yellow, a warrior's mark. She spoke into the microphone, her voice amplified, filling the massive space. She was not angry. She was not emotional. She was a surgeon. "I am an independent forensic accountant," she began, her voice steady and clear. "I was retained to review discrepancies in the Northline Homes charity. What I found was not a discrepancy. It was a system." She put the data on the main screen, the flow chart, Northline, Aegis Logic, the Urban Integrity Commission, the Blue Lantern Fund. "These are not community grants," she said, her voice cutting. "They are bribes, payments disguised as scholarships, funneled directly to shell companies owned by—" She paused and read 2 names. 2 councilmen on the dais went white. As she spoke, the second wave of my attack hit. My anonymous tip to the IFCD, the one I had sent last night, had just been activated. Miles away, federal agents were walking into the offices of the Blue Lantern Fund. A councilman's aide rushed up and whispered in his ear. The councilman stood up, sputtering. "This is an outrage. These are baseless accusations. Our accounts are—" "Frozen," a new voice said. My IFCD contact, wearing a federal agent's jacket, had just walked into the atrium. As of 10 minutes ago, the Interstate Financial Crimes Directorate has frozen all assets of the Blue Lantern Fund pending a federal investigation. Vieri's entire cash flow seized in one sentence. While the hall erupted in chaos, the real war was happening outside. The Rook Syndicate was not stupid. They knew the data was public. They were not trying to save the operation. They were trying to retrieve their proprietary tech, the mobile server, still hidden in the Aegis Logic building. A team of their data hunters, 6 men in black, were moving on the building. But Mina was waiting. She was not there to fight them. She was there to confuse them. From a command van 3 blocks away, she erected a digital wall. She spoofed signals, created phantom heat signatures, and looped security feeds. The Rooks ran into a house of mirrors, searching for a server that was already gone. Because I had it, I had made my own deal, an hour earlier, in a wet alleyway on the other side of town. Trent Baylor had been hiding, trapped between Vieri, Joey, and me. I was the only one who offered him a future. "They're going to kill me," he had blubbered, his good hand shaking. "Joey, Vieri, they know I have the failsafe, the physical keys." "They will," I said. "Unless you give them to me, give me the server keys, and I give you to the U.S. Marshals. Witness protection. A new life." He chose to live. He handed me a small, encrypted drive. "The codes are on it. Just get me out of Lake Haven." I made the call. He was gone. I was driving toward the glass hall, the final piece of the puzzle in my pocket, when my secure line buzzed. It was one of Mina's men. "Boss, we have eyes on Crest. He's not at the hall. He's not at the rail yard. He's in his car, a black sedan, and he's just turned onto Mercer. He's on the route to the hall. He's not running." My blood went cold. When he was not running, he was hunting. He was going after the only person left who could tie him to the Rook Syndicate. He was going for Aurora. "He will not touch her," I snarled. I spun the wheel, my SUV jumping the curb, and slammed the accelerator. I cut through a side street, my engine roaring, and shot onto the elevated structure of the lower Mercer Viaduct. The rain, which had been a mist, now turned into a driving, horizontal sheet. The viaduct was a slick, black ribbon of wet asphalt. And there he was. His black sedan, 200 yards ahead. He saw me in his rear view. He accelerated. He thought it was a chase. He thought he could outrun me. He was wrong. I was not chasing him. I was corralling him. He swerved, trying to block me as I pulled alongside. His car slammed into my passenger side, the sound of screeching metal echoing over the city. My SUV was heavier. I held the line. He tried to ram me again, pushing me toward the barrier. He was all rage, all panic. I was cold calculation. I saw the turn coming. I waited. As he pulled back for another ram, I hit the brakes. Hard. He shot past me, then I floored it, hitting his rear quarter panel. It was a perfect pit maneuver. His sedan spun 180 degrees. He was facing me, sliding backward at 70 miles an hour on wet pavement. He overcorrected. The sedan's front end smashed into the concrete barrier. It was not a cinematic explosion. It was a sickening, final crunch of metal and bone. The car stopped. Steam hissed from the ruined engine. Joey Crest was not getting up. Inside the city glass hall, the room was silent, hanging on Aurora's final words. The councilmen were yelling. The media was shouting questions. Aurora stood at the podium, calm in the center of the hurricane she had created. She held up one hand. The room quieted. "You can yell," she said, her voice clear and carrying. "You can dispute the names. You can claim political motives, but the numbers are on the screen. The data has been sent because paper does not lie. Only the people who sign it know how to hide." The room exploded. A flash flood of cameras. Reporters were running, screaming into their phones. The Lake Haven Ledger reporter stood up and shouted, "We have the file. It's confirmed. We are running it on the front page tomorrow." The councilmen were trapped. The trap was public. It was over. I found her in a quiet service hallway, away from the chaos. She was leaning against a wall, her eyes closed, her whole body trembling from the adrenaline. The rain from the viaduct was still dripping from my hair and my coat. She opened her eyes and saw me. She did not run. She did not cry. She just met me halfway. I pulled her in, my arms wrapping around her, her face pressing into my chest. I buried my face in her hair, breathing in her scent. The only clean thing in my world. She was shaking, but she was solid. She was safe. Our foreheads touched. We did not speak. We just stood there, two survivors, our hearts beating a rare, quiet rhythm of peace. It lasted for exactly 1 second. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a single, insistent buzz. I let her go, just enough to pull it out. It was a text from Mina. My heart went cold. Ravenspur Pier, 1 hour. Vieri just called a meeting with his last assets. He's betting the whole table. It's the final deal. Tonight. We did not go back to the bunker. We did not go back to the war room. The victory at the glass hall was hollow. Just one battle in a war that was still raging. I felt the vibration of Mina's text message, the one that meant the fight was not over. And I knew where I had to go. I took Aurora's hand. I did not speak. I led her from the service corridor to the private elevator, the one that bypassed every other floor. I pressed the button for the roof. "Emilio, what is it?" she asked, her voice still trembling from the adrenaline of her speech. "Mina." "Vieri is not done," I said. The elevator doors opened. The wind hit us like a physical blow. The night sky over Lake Haven was clear. The storm washed away, leaving the city glittering below us like a circuit board of pure light. The air was cold, biting, but it was clean. We walked to the glass barrier, the same spot where she had first kissed me. "He's making a final move," I said, my voice flat, almost carried away by the wind. "At Ravenspur Pier, tonight." She turned to face me, her back to the city. The wind whipped her hair across her face, and she looked wild, beautiful, and terrified. "Then we go," she said. "No," I said, my voice softer. I reached out and slowly, gently, brushed the stray hairs from her cheek. My fingers lingered on her skin. "I go. You stay." "I am not hiding," she said, her voice rising, the fire coming back. "I am not the woman you found at Hollow Bridge. Emilio, I am in this, with you." "I know," I said. I cupped her face, my thumbs resting on her cheekbones. The last trace of the yellow bruise was gone. "I know exactly who you are. That is why you have to stay. You are not my liability. Aurora, you are my commander. If I go down tonight, you are the only one who can finish this. You are the only one who can protect Micah. I need you safe. I need you here, in the chair, as my eyes. The fear in her eyes was not for herself. It was for me. I cannot just watch you walk into that. You trust me to fight, I said. You have to trust me to win. She closed her eyes, leaning into my touch. I'm so scared. I brought my other hand up, my palms framing her face. He will not touch you again. He will not touch your son. I am ending this tonight, where it started. I leaned in and kissed her eyelid, a soft, brief promise. I felt her shiver. I kissed the other one. I moved to her temple, my lips brushing her skin. My hands slid from her face, down her neck, over her shoulders, to her waist, pulling her flush against me. I held her, safe, strong, my grip possessive but tender, my thumbs tracing the line of her ribs, right where she had been hurt. She sighed, a shaky breath, and laid her head against my chest. Her hand came up, small and warm, and spread flat over my heart. I could feel the heat of her palm through my shirt. I'm right here, she whispered. That broke me. I tilted her chin up. I looked into her eyes, seeing all the fear, all the strength, all the trust she was giving me. And I kissed her. It was not the desperate, frantic kiss from our first time up here. This was slow. It was deep. It was a complete surrender. It was a long, unhurried exploration, a silent conversation in the dark. It was the taste of her, the clean scent of her skin, the way her fingers tangled in my hair, pulling me closer. It was a kiss that said everything we could not. It said, I found you. It said, do not leave me. I pulled back just to breathe, and she let out a soft, breathless laugh, a sound of pure, unadulterated relief that shattered the tension. I kissed her again, longer this time, my body molding to hers, our heartbeats sinking into one frantic rhythm. The world fell away. There was no city, no pier, no Vieri. There was only the wind and her and this. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. The fade to black was not darkness. It was just a quiet moment of profound, earth-shattering peace. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I held her, my arms locked around her. My hand found hers, and our fingers interlaced. A perfect, tight grip. We stood there for a long time, just breathing, the wind howling around us, a storm we had finally escaped. We were two broken pieces, two orphans of St. Jude's, who had somehow, against all odds, made a whole. When I was at the orphanage, I said, my voice rough, my lips against her hair, I made myself a promise. I watched kids get torn apart, families destroyed. I swore that if I ever got the power, I would build a fortress. I would protect. I would shield one real family, keep them safe, no matter what. She tilted her head, looking up at me, her eyes shining in the city light. Then start here, Emilio, she whispered. Start with us. My phone vibrated, a single, harsh buzz, reality crashing back in. I let her go, my hands lingering on her waist. I pulled it out, a text from Mina. Ravenspur. Confirmed. Vieri is moving his physical assets from container B-17. That's his panic safe. And then the second text, the one that turned my blood to ice. EMS report from the viaduct. Joey Crest. They pulled him from the wreck. He had a broken arm, severe concussion, but he's gone. He overpowered a guard and walked out of the ER. He's in the wind, and he's just made contact with Vieri's team. A third text. He's leading an assassination team to the pier. Boss. He knows our tactics. He knows our comms. He's coming for you. I looked at Aurora. She saw the change in my face. What is it? Joey, he's alive, and he's going to be at the pier. Her face went pale. She knew what that meant. A traitor who knew our every move. You cannot go alone, and she said, I am not, I said. I have you. I tapped my earpiece. You stay here. You command. You are the brain, Aurora. I am just the blade. I turned to leave. Emilio, wait! I stopped. She was fumbling in the pocket of the suit jacket she had worn to the hearing. She pulled something out. It was Micah's small, bright blue plastic hair clip. She pressed it into my hand. He gave this to me, for luck. I closed my fist around it. The cheap plastic was warm from her body. I will bring it back, I said. She nodded, biting her lip. Take our luck. I left her on the roof, a solitary figure against the electric sky. I went down to the living floor. I saw him. Micah was in the corner of the great room, on the floor, surrounded by sheets of white paper. He was folding them. His small brow furrowed in concentration. He was making paper airplanes. He looked up as I approached, his face bright. Emilio, I am making them fly, look. He threw one. It nosedived, crashing into the leg of a sofa. I walked over and crouched beside him, my knees cracking. I picked up one of the planes. You are folding the wings wrong, I said, my voice quiet. The weight is off. You need more support here. My large, scarred hands that had just planned a war, gently took the paper. I made a new fold, a sharp, precise crease near the nose. And here, you have to lock the fold. See. I handed it back to him. Try now. He looked at the new design, his eyes wide. He stood up and threw it. It soared. It caught the air from the ventilation system and glided, smooth and perfect, all the way across the magnificent room, finally landing gently on the marble floor by the window. Whoa, he breathed, his smile lighting up the entire room. I smiled, a real smile. Tomorrow, I said, my voice rough as I stood up. When I get back, we will go up to the terrace. We will fly them from there. I promise. I put my hand on his head, just for a second. I turned and walked to the elevator, the little blue hair clip digging into my palm. The weight of that simple promise, the promise of tomorrow, was heavier than any armor. A child's smile, a paper airplane, a future. It was the only reason I was walking back into the night. Ravenspur Pier at midnight was where the story began, and it was where it would end. The neon signs of the closed market stalls were slick with mist, bleeding red and blue onto the wet concrete. The maze of shipping containers was a steel canyon, and the wind coming off the lake did not whisper. It roared, masking the sound of the waves crashing below. They were here, Vieri's raincoat team, dark figures armed for war, and leading them, his arm in a sling but his good hand holding a pistol, was Joey Crest. The bait was set. A single, black, official-looking car sat under a lone pylon light, inside, illuminated. Was Trent Baylor, supposedly in the custody of the IFCD. He was the lure. Aurora, are you in? I murmured, my hands empty at my sides. I am your shadow, Emilio. Her voice came back, crisp and calm in my ear. The drone is high. Thermal shows 22 targets, including Joey. Mina is in position on the north crane. I stepped out. I walked into the center of the yard, my footsteps echoing. I was alone, my hands visible. Caruso! Joey's voice was a ragged shout. You're old and you're stupid. You should have stayed away. He stepped out from behind a container, flanked by Vieri's men. He walked up behind me, and I felt the cold, hard press of his pistol against my spine. It's over, he sneered. Santo Vieri wanted me to give you a message, but I think I'll just... A sharp crack echoed, not a gunshot, but the sound of high-velocity metal hitting the light pylon above us. The yard was plunged into absolute, blinding darkness. Joey cursed, blinded by the sudden change, and stumbled back. Now, Mina, I heard Aurora whisper in my ear. Vieri, panicked by the darkness, shouted from his cover, He's stalling! Light up the container, B-17, get the cash fire! A hail of gunfire erupted, all of it focused on the container Vieri thought held his money. The metal side tore open like paper. But it was not cash that spilled out. It was light. A high-powered projector, hidden inside, roared to life. It threw a moving image onto a fine mist of water being sprayed from the roof of the opposite container. It was the data, the flow charts, the bank accounts, the names of the councilmen. All of it projected 10 stories high for the whole city to see. "What is this?" Vieri screamed. "A diversion," Aurora's voice said. On cue, 2 black SUVs parked near the water's edge flashed their lights. Red and blue strobes, my fake federal team, the Federal Commerce Integrity Bureau, my own men dressed in tactical gear. "It's the feds," one of Vieri's men yelled. "We're boxed in." The raincoats turned and opened fire on the fake police cars, drawing all the heat away from me. Vieri panicked. Baylor, seeing his chance, scrambled from the decoy car and ran. "Emilio, he's running for the gate." Aurora's voice was urgent. "B-17 is linked to the magnetic traps on the floor. Get him to Gate E. The floor plate is live." I moved, cutting Baylor off. I did not grab him. I just appeared in his path. "This way, Baylor, if you want to live." I herded him, directing his panic. He sprinted, his feet pounding. He hit the wide steel plate at Gate E. There was a loud thunk. A massive electromagnet beneath the concrete fired. Baylor was slammed to the ground as his gun, his belt buckle, and, most importantly, the encrypted phone in his pocket were ripped from his grasp and stuck fast to the metal plate. I calmly walked over, plucked the phone from the plate, and slid it into the black degausser box in my hand. The final key. Caruso! Joey was back. He had me cornered against the pier's edge, the black water churning 10 feet below. He raised his pistol, his face a mask of rage. A single shot exploded. I felt a sharp, searing pain in my shoulder and dropped to one knee. But Joey was not the one who fired. He looked down, confused. At the new hole in his chest, he staggered. Mina rose from the shadows under the pier, like a creature from the lake. She was drenched. She did not hesitate. She slammed her shoulder into him, pushing him off balance. He toppled backward, disappearing into the dark, churning water below. She held a cable tie in her hand. He was not just falling, he was bound. "Fire, fire, kill them all," Vieri was screaming, trapped between his paranoia and the real sound of approaching sirens. "Aurora, now," I grunted, my hand on my shoulder. "Lights up," she said. A row of massive industrial floodlights on a barge I had parked in the harbor ignited, bathing the entire pier in the light of an artificial sun. Santo Vieri was caught, his hands in the air, his face pale, and sitting right in the glare, having just arrived, was the real IFCD. They had received the full data package, the location, and now a spotlight on their man. Vieri, cornered, made one last desperate move. He lunged for a fuse box on the side of container B-17, his hand reaching for a large red switch, a dead man's switch, a bomb. I was too far. My shoulder was fire. I had nothing. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the only thing I had, the small, blue plastic hair clip. I threw it. It sailed end over end and hit the metal fuse box with a tiny, sharp clack. The sound was nothing, but it was everything. It was the sound of a knife hitting the pavement at St. Jude's, the sound of a small thing, an insignificant object, changing the entire world. I did not think I moved. I closed the distance in 2 strides. I tackled Vieri just as his fingers brushed the switch. I slammed him against the steel container, my uninjured arm crushing his wrist. The fight went out of him. The Kong clicked. It was over. The dawn was a pale, gray smear when she arrived. The pier was a mess of federal agents, forensics, and surrendered men. I was sitting on the edge, my shoulder bandaged by a medic. Aurora ran. She did not slow down. She crashed into me, her arms wrapping around my neck, her face burying into my chest. I held her with my good arm, pulling her tight. Our foreheads touched. I could feel her heart hammering against my own. "We are home," I whispered. The Lake Haven Ledger's front page screamed, "Fake housing net exposed. City council implicated. The Urban Integrity Commission was dissolved." The IFCD confirmed they had recovered over $40 million in laundered funds. A week later, I held my own press conference. I announced the dissolution of the non-legitimate branches of the Caruso Consortium, and I announced the formation of the Raven Spur Grant, a new multi-million-dollar fund dedicated to supporting victims of domestic violence and their families, with its chief advisor and administrator, Aurora Keene. The final scene was not in the shadows, it was in the sun. On the rooftop of Harbor Point Tower, the wind was gentle. Micah, his face bright with joy, stood at the edge. "Now," he yelled. He threw the paper airplane, the one I had taught him to make. It caught the wind, that new, clean Lake Haven wind. It soared, climbing higher and higher, a speck of white against the blue, gliding over the edge of the city. I stood behind him, my arm, now in a sling, resting. Aurora came and stood beside me. She slipped her hand into mine. We watched the plane fly, free, resilient, like our promise of a decent life. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I truly appreciate you spending your time with me. Let me know what part of the world you are listening from in the comments. I would love to connect and hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, like this video. And if you enjoyed it, please support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.